In its war against Ukraine, Russia is using tactics that are ruthless towards its own soldiers. It is literally pushing the front with the lives of its own soldiers. Russian Z-patriot and propagandist Maxim Kalashnikov wrote about this openly. Kalashnikov spoke about 3 bad news that had upset him greatly in the last 3 days. The first was the liquidation of Ivan Demidov, a Russian neo-Nazi from the Espanyon group, under the call sign Botox at the front. The second news was the losses in his former unit. 5 fighters died and 6 wounded, 2 of them seriously. The Ukrainian Armed Forces bombed with drones and ironed out with artillery for several hours in a row. Their fire raid was not suppressed in any way during this time, Kalashnikov said. The third news is the liquidation of the platoon of the former commander Kalashnikov. The unit was zeroed immediately after training. My former commander's platoon, after 3 weeks of preparation, ceased to exist in the very first attack. They didn't even have time to leave their trenches, the Z-patriot reported. He tried to reach out to Russian dictator Vladimir Putin, calling on him to pay attention to the terrible losses of the Russian armed forces. Recall the number of verified Russian troops killed in Ukraine has surpassed 100,000 more than 3 years after the Kremlin launched its full-scale invasion, according to an independent tally by the BBC's Russian service and the Mediazona news website. Of those killed, nearly 1/4 were volunteer soldiers, while more than 16% were convicted prisoners and over 11% were mobilized troops. Members of motorized rifle units accounted for nearly 7%, airborne forces for more than 3%, and private mercenaries for over 2%. Among the dead were more than 4,800 officers from the Russian armed forces and other security agencies. Their share of total casualties fell from 10% in the early months of the invasion to 2 to 3% by late 2023 as Russia ramped up recruitment of volunteers. Mediazona noted on Friday that in nearly 30% of recorded deaths, the soldiers' service branch was unknown. The outlets rely on open-source information, such as official statements, obituaries, and social media posts to compile their figures. The Russian Defense Ministry rarely comments on its military losses in what it insists on calling a special military operation.
Ukrainian special forces have struck 2 Russian boats in Black Sea in Russian-annexed Crimea Peninsula. The operation was carried out by Prizrak unit under Main Intelligence Directorate of Ukraine, known as HUR, who successfully evaded Russian anti-aircraft missiles deployed in the area. The group also struck TAR-M2 anti-aircraft missile system in Crimea. The destroyed Russian boats are 02510BK, 16 high-speed boat and Raptor boat. A video of the assault operation has been shared in Ukrainian military's Telegram channel. The video shows the moment of the drone strike launched during night time. Russian Black Sea Fleet and other military equipment stationed in occupied Crimea Peninsula are frequent subjects of Ukraine's drone and artillery attacks. A large number of Russian military equipment, including a ship and helicopter, was destroyed in the attack carried out by Prizrak Group last week.
Operation Pipe, carried out by Russian troops in March in the Kursk region, became another illustration of chaos, lies, and indifference to their own soldiers. As military expert Alexander Kovalenko notes, hundreds of participants in the suicidal assault died and remained nameless, and random people and even bloggers received awards. More than 3 weeks have passed since the so-called Operation Potok, better known by the mocking name of Truba, but the Kremlin has not yet arranged any award ceremonies for the heroes of the special operation. And there are good reasons for this. Instead of triumph, there has been failure. Instead of heroism, there have been losses hushed up by the command. The operation consisted of the Russian command sending 600 to 800 attack aircraft to liberate the city of Sudza in the Kursk region through a 15-kilometer pipeline. Yes, you heard right. The soldiers were literally driven into the pipe. According to Kovalenko, the day after Gerasimov reported to Putin about the heroic operation, it turned out that only 112 people had been awarded. This is despite the fact that the number of participants, according to official data, exceeded 600 and according to unofficial data, up to 800. 112 awarded and 800 people who crawled 15 kilometers through the pipe. This is a discrepancy, because most of these people remained there or were simply written off, Kovalenko emphasized. According to the expert, initially Russian commander Lapin was offered to conduct a landing from Mi-8 helicopters under the cover of Mi-28N. This would have taken 2 to 3 minutes and would have allowed the task to be completed with minimal losses. However, the general refused. He did not want to risk the equipment, deciding that it was easier to drive hundreds of people into a pipe, literally. The result was a failure of the operation and the death of dozens, if not hundreds, of soldiers who are now forgotten. Many of them will become permanently crippled as their lungs suffered severe damage in the form of burns after inhaling air with chemical impurities. But even with those who were awarded, not everything is clean. One of those who received the award for participation in the operation is blogger Roman Alekhine, who signed a contract on the eve of the operation and immediately terminated it. At the same time, the real participants, in all likelihood, were simply forgotten or left in the pipe. This is a farce and a slap in the face to those who actually participated in the operation. But what's surprising if this entire special operation was built on deception and show from the very beginning? Kovalenko sums up. Operation Pipe in the Kursk region, as Kovalenko notes, became yet another manifestation of the deep degradation of Russian military structures. Instead of military logic, senseless victims; instead of professionalism, a political showcase; instead of victory, silence and fear of the truth.